the fact that he would come to the humble, lowly shepherds, and that's who the angels chose to see, and that's who got to see the newborn king, and that's who approached him first.
Yeah. What does that tell us about our God?
Anybody can approach him.
Well, Castleview, good to have you today. Thanks for joining us for this very special Christmas edition of our podcast. And I've got two very special guests with us today. Matter of fact, our church knows them very, very well. We've got Dr. Larry Hedquist with us. And Doc, it's really good to see you today. Thank you for joining our podcast. Dr. Hedquist has been how many years now at the church?
13 years.
Has it been 13 years?
Yep.
13 years. You've been with us all but 3 years at the church.
Yes.
Okay. All right. You're one of the oldest rats in the barn. Is that what they call it? What do you say?
I think you could say that.
Dr. Hedquist, you have been at Pensacola for a number of years. You taught, what classes did you teach when you were there? You were a Bible professor for a long time.
Well, I started off in 4th grade and then 5th grade, and then jumped from there up into the college. I taught Life of David, Bible doctrines, evangelizing children.
I
Old Testament
remember
survey.
being a college student. I believe I was, maybe I was on staff at the time, actually. And we would have a soul-winning seminar. Do you remember that?
Yes.
We had a soul-winning seminar at the church, at Campus Church, and you taught how to evangelize children. You had a breakout set. You remember that?
Yes, I do.
I remember either I was a student or I was on staff. I don't remember which one it was, but I do remember that when the church, large church, 6,000 member church, when they needed a go-to how to teach children, Dr. Larry Hedquist was the guy. And you've done that at our church, and now, of course, you lead our seniors ministry and have done such an amazing job with that. So you and your wife, Marion, some of my favorite people in the world. So thank you for being here this morning and joining us. And then Jeremy, and I got to interview you just a few weeks ago, and that's been one of our best most viewed podcasts we've had so far. People just really seem to connect with you and enjoy you, and I think a lot of people saw that and said, "Hey, I know that guy from the front door." So
the bearded guy at the door.
The bearded guy at the door that doesn't let me sit and just be quiet. That guy chases me down. Right. I got to know a little bit more about this guy. And so thank you for being with us. And by the way, I don't know if we talked about this last time. You teach one of our life groups as well, the Home Builders. How long have you been at our church?
It's 3.5 years.
3.5 years. Yeah. Boy, it's gone by like that.
It has.
It really has.
Yeah.
So let's go to our Christmas service. We just came off of an amazing week at our church. I mean, the Christmas at Castleview services were just, we had well over 600 people that were there. And we had a couple of dozen that indicated they received Christ at those. Just an amazing weekend. What was your favorite part, Doc? By the way, you were Luke.
Yes,
in the film.
Yes.
And I feel like I need to mention this. I miss the beard.
I do too.
Jeremy, what did you think of that thing?
I loved it. I mentioned it to Larry's daughter and son-in-law, and John, his son-in-law, said that Marion hates it.
Yeah, that's the reason it doesn't have it. And I have to take a little offense with Marion here because, Doc, you look good in that beard.
Does.
I mean, I have beard envy. My beard bowed to yours.
Yeah. It was straight. It was full. It was thick.
It was beautiful. I know some people thought that's got to be fake.
Yeah.
That was a real beard.
Right.
And you grew that thing out. It was amazing. Would you have that beard today if Marion let you?
Oh, yeah.
You would?
Yeah.
Okay.
I enjoyed it.
Okay. You
Right.
did. Yeah. Did you ever get food in that beard?
Oh, I'm sure I did.
Sure you did. Well, now we know who wears the
question.
pants in the family. Marion's going to hate this part.
Happy wife, happy life.
Why is it always got to be about the wife? Well, why can't it be happy spouse, happy house?
Well, I guess you could try that.
But it doesn't work as well, does it?
Yeah.
Well, you remember I
happy the way it
shaved
is.
my beard at Easter, and I thought my wife was going to leave me, so it's the opposite.
Yeah.
Oh,
Listen,
okay.
I didn't want to look at you when that beard was gone. Some people just have a face that the more you can cover it up, the better you look.
It's makeup for men.
Yeah, makeup. And you know what's funny is is our we have a welcome video at the church that I think we play every week before the podcast, and it was the weekend that you really had you know. Was that a mistake, by the way? Did you mess that up?
I did mess it up. Yeah. So I went to trim the neckline.
Yeah.
I got up into the jawline. I was like, that's not going to work. So then I was like, okay, I'll do a goatee like Pastor for a couple weeks. And then I don't know what I was doing that day, but I walked downstairs and my girls, one's 17, one's 14, they had never in their life ever seen me without a beard.
What did they say?
Who are you?
Yeah, they said, ooh.
Ooh, yeah. You know, it's funny because just last week I was shaving. I had the guard on, you know, and the guard popped off right as I was so close, and it was going to be right before Christmas at Castleview, and I had that adrenaline shot, like, wow, people are going to see my face, and this is not going to be good. And this is the hard-hitting content that people tune into this podcast for. So thank you.
Well, you know, Drew asked me before as he was getting ready to make the film, he said, we'd like to have you in it, and we need you to grow a beard for our Christmas film.
Did he think you could?
Well, yes, of course. But anyway,
of course. I'm sorry.
Yes. But I thought,
didn't mean to insult you.
A Christmas film, and I get to have a beard. I'm going to be Santa Claus. And he said, no, it's not that kind of a film.
Not that kind of a film. Yeah.
So that week, Larry grew that beard.
3 days later, it was 3 inches long.
Took several months.
I was going to say it must have because that was pretty impressive. What was your Doc? What was your favorite part of the film? Of course, we did Peace on Earth, and it was Luke gathering the evidence. The author Luke, New Testament character, he's gathering the evidence. By the way, I love the part at the very beginning that it's getting ready to go to Mary, and all of a sudden he says, "I think I'll start with." And then it's thinking, you're not speaking, but it's thinking, and then all of a sudden you light up with this smile, and I just thought that was so good. Your acting skills were impeccable.
Just did what Drew said.
What was your favorite part about Christmas at Castleview weekend?
Seeing all the people coming. That was wonderful. Over 600 people, you said,
yes, sir,
that came, and seeing all those faces. I don't know those people. Who are they?
Yeah.
Let's get
We had about 120 Saturday night that were guests, and well over 200 that were guests over the few presentations that we had. So that was pretty neat to see so many. One of the things I loved about it too was so many of them were just people inviting, and that was really encouraging.
More often, it was people told me, were you invited? That's what the first thing I asked. Yes.
Almost
everyone.
That was fantastic. What was your favorite part, Jeremy?
I think it was just watching the church come together, our core of the church, and watch how they interacted with all these new people. I mean, it was like we had 150 guest services people on those 3 services, and they really just embraced the concept. They welcomed them. They shook their hands. It was hellos and handshakes, and I mean, everyone just pitched in. And then watching their faces as all these new people walked in. I love seeing our church get excited about things. Yeah. And it was definitely an excitement in their eyes watching all these new faces walk through.
That's right. Yeah. And the reason is because they're bought in the mission. We want to lead people in a growing relationship with Jesus. And obviously that onboarding is you got to meet Jesus first, right?
I've seen people giving up their seats. I've seen people getting chairs for other people in the balconies. I've seen it all. Like our people really, truly embraced the concept.
Yeah, they loved it.
They did.
So the message on that day, Christmas at Castleview, we talked about Mary and we talked about the shepherds. And I want to talk about that for just a minute. And here, this is going to release, I think, on Christmas Eve, probably that morning. And maybe this would be a great time to recenter our hearts on the Christmas story, the Nativity. And in the message last weekend, we centered on Mary a little bit, and we talked about the unexpected call. I mean, if you're God and you are going to select a woman to carry your son, the Messiah, the Redeemer of mankind, Mary would have been perhaps an unexpected choice. When you think about it, we know that she's the one, and we know that that's the story, and so maybe we don't think about it that often. But when you think about it, she is kind of an unexpected choice. Why would that be? Why would Mary be unexpected? And maybe before we even answer that question, what do you think is going through Mary's mind when the angel of God comes to her and says, you will, by the way, you're highly favored and you are going to bear the Son of God? What do you think Mary's reaction is in that moment?
Well, we've been kind of programmed we know the story, and from kids we knew the story, so of course that's what happened. It's just the way we've learned it. But if we had been there at the time and somebody said, if God asked us for advice, who should I pick out? I doubt that we would have come up with Mary. Let's get somebody important and rich and powerful, and and she's none of those things.
Sure. No. Okay. What do we know about her? And I guess this leads right into why it's so unexpected. There was a couple things that we take from the story that maybe aren't explicitly stated, but you start filling in the details a little bit because of even their offering that they give, right? What do we know from that?
Well, they were poor.
They were poor.
Yeah.
Okay.
The offering of the 2 turtle doves, 2 birds, they couldn't afford to go out and buy a couple of sheep for the offering. So
yeah, and we know that they would have had to give a lamb if they had any means at all, right? That was the tax that would have been required of them, but they didn't have that, and so they come and they bring 2 turtle doves. So that makes it unexpected, right? I mean, you're not thinking to yourself, here's a person that is going to be chosen. She's poverty-stricken, lowly. It just doesn't feel like that goes together with the Son of God. But by the way, doesn't that connect with the entire coming of Jesus?
Yes.
There's other parts of the story that you go, wow, why did Jesus come that way? It makes me think of the song, How Should a King Come?
I love that song.
Yeah. And what does it talk about? I mean, Jesus comes in a different way than we would have expected. How did Jesus come?
Well, he came lowly. I mean, he came so that he could be approached by anyone.
Yeah.
I thought about how that his birth, and he was put in a situation where that anyone could come. So you think about if he had came to a palace, it would be royalty and above, but he came to a manger. He came to a poor city, and in that city, anyone would be welcome. So it was from the bottom up rather than from the top down. And I just thought about how that Mary, as she was dealing with this whole scenario and situation, I thought about for a second, I tried to put myself in her shoes and consider, what was she looking at the day before she found out this news? And I thought how that all she saw was her future. She was engaged. She was young. She had all these plans and ideas and thoughts. And, she probably thought about, the wedding or where they would live or how many kids.
This is a life-changing moment.
Yeah. And just like that, her life and everything that she had planned, all the ideas and thoughts she had were gone.
So there is a submission here too, right? And I guess this kind of comes into play of why choose Mary. Because you've got to know that in the back of her mind, there is, what is Joseph going to think? What are my parents going to think? Matter of fact, we know that she goes to Joseph and she tells him, and we don't have the whole conversation, and I would love to hear the conversation. I'd love to be able to be in heaven one day and say, hey, Joe, how'd that go? Let's talk about that. But we know that he doesn't believe her.
Right.
He's going to put her away privately. He doesn't believe her. And so don't you think that's probably part of the reason that Mary is chosen is because she is, to your point, I've got an entire future. I've got my life planned out. I know exactly how this is going to go. I've got this guy that's committed to me. We're going to be, here's the direction of my future. And all of a sudden, God comes in and says, hold on a minute. I've got a different plan.
Yeah.
And doesn't God often do that with us? Now, the plans God has sometimes, he brings in sometimes unexpected things that are wonderful, that we love. Sometimes he brings in things that we don't. Cancer is an unexpected plan, but he can get the glory through it, and he can bring healing. He can do whatever he wants to do. But don't you think that with Mary is part of the reason that maybe she was chosen?
Yes.
Just that submission.
Yes. And we think of her as being honored and exalted, but that's not what her life was like. To become pregnant before she's married, the stigma that would go with that. And then for her little baby boy to grow up not to be honored and respected by everybody, but rather to be crucified. The pain that would have been
Great
for her.
point. She really, we think automatically of, wow, the mother of the Messiah. What an amazing thing this is.
That was hard.
And that is now. That is now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, she's looking right now. You'd go to her in heaven and go, "Hey, are you glad you did? Are you kidding me? That's amazing."
Certainly.
But you just brought up a great point. It wasn't then.
It was difficult for her. Terrible.
Is there anything worse for a parent than to watch your children suffer?
Right.
And that was the life of Jesus. He had nowhere to lay his head. He was the road that he chose to walk for us was one that was lined with rejection and hazarded by betrayal. And I mean, he's walking this road to crucifixion. And people, even the closest to him, are denying him. Peter does. We know Judas does. We expect that. But Peter, wait a minute. He's your guy. I mean, Peter's the one telling you how he's going to stand with you. And he rejects him. And Mary has a front row seat for all of that. The religious leaders, when they, they're negative, they're doubting him. She's watching that. When he's put on the cross, who's there? Mary. Can you imagine what it must have been like for a mom to be watching the crucifixion of her son, knowing that he has done nothing wrong?
Yeah. I often think too that I wonder how she, obviously she has in her womb the Son of God. And I've often wondered if she looked at her living situation, her money situation, her poverty, and ever felt like, why me?
Yeah.
I mean, God could have chose anyone, but he chose me. And, we want the best for our family. We want the best for our children. And, I've often wondered what she thought. Like, I wonder if she ever felt unworthy,
She must have.
One would assume.
Yeah, she must have. Yeah. Okay, so let's get to the part that's really unexpected. I mean, it's all of this is unexpected because of her financial condition, her social standing. There's nothing in her that you would say, well, that's the one. But obviously, the biggest unexpected part is she says it, right? The angel says, "Thou art highly favored." The angel says, "You're going to carry the Son of God." These are heavy statements, but she doesn't even stop and question that. Wait. Son of God, what are you talking about? She doesn't say, "Oh, highly favored. Tell me more." What does God think about me? Hey, tell me what he sees in me. Doesn't say any of that. What does she go right to? How can these things be? Seeing I know not a man. The virgin birth was so vital to this story. Why is that? Why was the virgin birth so important? And it is important because obviously the writer in the New Testament makes that point, but the Old Testament obviously talks about that as well. Why is the virgin birth important?
Well, we inherit our sin from our fathers. And Who's the father of Jesus? Well, God is. All
Yeah.
right. So he did not inherit sin from an earthly father.
Yes.
He did not have an earthly father.
That's right. Romans 5:12, for as by one man sin entered into the world. Well, that one man was Adam, but now we have a second Adam, Jesus, who knew no sin, right? And therefore, for all of us that are sinners, if Jesus would have been born of Joseph, well, Jesus has a sin nature. He's not untouched. He's not that undefiled, unblemished Lamb of God, as Peter talks about. He's not the same as we are in that way.
Right.
And then he lives this life. By the way, have you ever thought about this? What would it have been like to be one of Jesus's brothers? Have you ever thought of, you talk about, my brother walks on water. You talk about a special, can you imagine what that, you must not have loved it at all times, right, Jeremy? I mean, come on, there must have been some tough days.
Why can't you be more like your brother?
Why can't you be more like your brother? He's perfect. That had to be a little annoying at times, right?
Why doesn't he ever get in trouble?
Right. I mean, that's a tough one to live up to for sure. Yeah. But Jesus is different, and that's one of the things we really brought out in that in the message was the reason we have hope is because Jesus could pay for our sin when we can't. Your mom may love you, but she can't die for you. Your grandma may love you, but she can't die for you. Your pastor, your mom, your dad, whoever may love you, but they can't die for you. But Jesus, out of all the billions of people that have ever been born into this world, is uniquely qualified to be able to pay for your sin because he did not have the sin nature passed on to him. So when he dies on the cross, he's able to shed his blood not for his own sin. He didn't have to pay for. Right. He's able to shed his blood for your sin and for my sin. Yeah. So Mary's interesting, and we kind of brought her out a little bit in that message. There's another group of people that I think was pretty interesting too that we talked about, and that was the shepherds. You said a minute ago that Mary's just part of the story. And so you just kind of automatically place her there, and you don't take time to think about how odd that might feel to people in that time. I think the shepherds are the exact same. We hear the fear not now, and then they take off and they go and see this newborn king. But in that day, it would have been odd for the shepherds to be receiving the news of this Messiah that's coming. Why would that be? Any reasons you might think that the shepherds wouldn't have been the logical choice?
Well, I think when you look at the shepherds, though, I think it's more about who they represent, not necessarily looking at the shepherd or a shepherd. It's more about who they represent, and it's the common people. And, I've heard it said that God loves common people. That's why he made so many of them. And, the fact that he would come to the humble, lowly, smelly, socially awkward, maybe shepherds. And that's who the angels chose to see. And that's who got to see the newborn king. And that's who approached him first.
Yeah. What does that tell us about our God?
Anybody can approach him.
Whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved.
The ground is level at the cross.
That's right. And I love that. And I would even go a step further than the shepherd being the common. You are right in that. I'd even go a step further. In Bible times, the shepherd was the outcast in a lot of ways.
They were looked down upon.
Their testimony was inadmissible in court. That they may have seen a crime take place, but a shepherd could not give testimony in court. That's how they were viewed. They were looked at as unclean by the religious leaders. Therefore, the temple was not a place for them. They could not serve in the temple, attend. It was a totally that they were seen as the outcast of society. By the way, I was thinking about this in that message. When you think about the shepherd, you even see the disdain for shepherds in the life of David. Do you remember a time that maybe David's...
Yeah, where's your kid brother? Oh, he's out taking care of the sheep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He's not even brought to Samuel. Right? They don't even hey, can't be David. He's a little shepherd boy.
Don't you have any other kids? Well, yeah, but you don't want him.
Right. Yeah. Oh, well, Eliab's got to be the one, or I've got some great choices, but not this guy. There's another time that they specifically talk about what he does. You remember what that time was when they talk about
when he went to the battle site?
Yeah.
And his brothers are saying, "Who's taking care of those few sheep of yours?"
Yeah. And they absolutely cast aspersion, that they're negative. And what do they say? David, you can't do this. With whom hast thou left those few sheep in the wilderness? In other words, David, not only are you just a kid, you're a shepherd. You're coming out to this battle to try to do some big thing. Mm-hmm. No, David, you are an insignificant character on this battlefield right now. Mm-hmm. And I think that's interesting to think about. They were the outcast of society, and the connection there is we are the outcast, right? And it's not because of our social standing. We live in Castle Rock, Colorado. We're not, I would not consider us on a social level outcasts, but I would consider us outcast on a spiritual level. And it's not because of our social standing, it's because of our sin. And the Bible says that every one of us are infected by sin, right? Mm-hmm. And so when I think about the shepherds, I think that there's no question that God does give us this picture of any person can have access to God. Mm-hmm. That's a powerful thing to think about.
Yeah.
That there's not a soul in the world. And by the way, we talked about this in the message. Nobody is too bad to come to Jesus.
And no one is too good.
And no one is too good. Yeah. Do you think sometimes people think they're too bad?
Yes.
Have you ever come across somebody like that you know what?
Yes.
God may save you, but he couldn't do that for me. He wouldn't do that for me.
Yeah.
You think about who could have went through the door of that stable. I mean, if animals were welcome to walk in, shepherds were welcome to walk in, anyone is welcome to walk in.
Yeah.
And you talked about it on Sunday, and you talked about how that salvation is a free gift, and you dealt with it being a gift. And I still think, about it being a gift, but a free gift still requires an open hand.
Yeah.
And if someone's not willing to receive the gift, and Jesus is the Son of God, but you have to be willing and to receive him. And so it still requires that open hand.
That's interesting you say that, because when you say that it requires an open hand, I'm thinking of a word, and that word is humility. To receive Jesus. He has come to this earth to give his life for us, right? But it does require that you admit that you need that gift.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be the obstacle, the bar that sometimes people have a hard time getting over, even understanding that they have that need?
Yeah. I think sometimes when we think about our sin, we often look at others and we see what a mess their life is, and we think they need Jesus.
Yeah.
But we don't look at ourselves, and, I'm trying to think of how I've heard it worded, but it's,
I'm not that bad.
I'm not that bad.
Well, I can tell you what it is. When we judge ourselves by our motives.
Yeah.
We judge others by their actions.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Or lack of, right? Oh, you didn't do that nice thing. You didn't take a meal over to that. Well, neither did I, but I meant to. I wanted to.
Yeah.
If I wasn't so busy, I would have, right? And so we see ourselves, well, I was just really had a lot going on. I got kids. I judge myself by my motives. Well, I would have done these nice things. I just didn't. I couldn't do it, or had time to do it. But the same thing is true for you. But well, you didn't do it. And I don't take into consideration, maybe you wanted to as well. We seem to lift ourselves up a little bit in our own eyes. And there is a humility that's required. What about, it makes me think of the rich young ruler that Jesus deals with.
I've done those things all my life.
I've done all these things. And so what does Jesus say? Listen, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than it is for who?
A rich man.
For a rich man, and the inference there is a rich man that is dependent and proud of his own accomplishments and his own making of his own way to be able to go and be with the Father. Yeah. And so I think the shepherds give us this amazing story of humility that you've got to. Listen, Jesus has come, but you have got to lay down your own resume, your own way of doing things. You come to Jesus understanding that, listen, when I receive Jesus Christ, I'm getting a gift that I don't deserve. God did something for me that I didn't deserve, but he did that for every single person. He came to Mary. She's going to be the mother of the Messiah, the Son of God. He showed himself to the shepherds, the common, the outcast, because the shepherds now are kind of a picture of us, that Jesus came for all of us.
Don't so many people think I can earn this. I can do things that are going to earn me my salvation. I don't need a free gift. Sure, that's great, but I also have to earn it. I can do that. That's something I can do to earn my favor with God.
Yeah.
And God says, no, you can't.
Yeah.
We don't want to hear that.
You can't do that. There's no way that you can do that.
Good people look at bad people, as we like to call them, and good people look at overly sinful people. And they look at their life and they look at their sins and they think to themselves, well, all these things that they do, I don't do. Yeah. So those things are not going to keep me out of heaven. But sometimes the fact that they've never done those things may be the very thing that keeps them out of heaven. Because the point is that they never see their need of a Savior. They never see the need to receive Christ in their lives, and it's a very dangerous thing to live our life in comparison to others instead of in comparison to Christ.
In other words, they see themselves as, we don't need it, I'm too good, right? It's the opposite of the I'm too bad, I'm too good.
It's not because they are, it's because they never were.
Yeah,
I'm better than all those other people.
Sure. Well, and don't you think that's how Satan is blinded so many people too?
Yes.
I remember I talked to Bill, I talked about Sunday the first time when we had that conversation about his eternity. And his first reaction was, well, if I stood before God, I'd tell him I've been really faithful and I've done some really great things and I've really tried to be a stand-up husband and a good guy. And I would sure hope that God would let me in because of what I've done. And it has nothing to do with what you've done. It's not by works of righteousness which we have done, but according to his mercy, he saved us. Yeah. And we've got to all see ourselves in that. And I love that picture that God even gives us through Mary and through the shepherds, common people, outcast people that were just willing to give us a little bit of a picture of what salvation could be, even in the announcement to them. Yeah. And then for them to have the humility to be able to receive what God was doing in their lives. Pretty interesting stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you really kind of get into it and think about it a little bit and examine their life. So thanks, guys. I appreciate you sitting down with me a little bit today and just kind of working through this and talking about this. And as we sit down and share, and I would encourage all of our church members, as you sit down, and by the way, do this, as you sit down with your kids and you read through the Christmas story, remember that these characters are real people and they had real emotion and they had real problems. And we just talked about how it would be difficult for Mary. And we talked about the lowliness and the outcast shepherds. And remember that as you go through that story, and bring that out to your kids. Hey, what would it have felt like if you were in this place? Hey, can you imagine if this was you, and what would you have been feeling? And this year, I would encourage you to really take a minute and allow this story, this true life event, to really kind of take on a life of reality to the kid. Don't let this be a fairy tale. Don't let this be really don't even just read it and just kind of rush through it. But just, hey, Johnny, what did you think about, hey, Tommy, what did you think about Susie? What if you were in this role? What would you consider? And why would this be difficult for you? And then just stop and rejoice that our God loves us so much that while we were yet sinners, God sent his son into this world to die for us. Hey, maybe someone's watching this right now and you have never received the gift of Jesus Christ. As Jeremy said a minute ago, you've got to unwrap this gift. You've got to take what Jesus is offering. Reach out to us. Let us know. You can email me, pastor@castleviewbaptist.com. Reach out to us. Let us know that, and we'd sure love to have a conversation about that with you. Hey, can I tell you this? Merry Christmas for me and our church, and we are so thankful that you have chosen to watch today. Have a great Christmas, and we look forward to seeing you again next time.